Hello noble home dogs and pup champs. In today's video, we're going to be discussing the latest Doctor Who episode, the long-awaited New Year's Day special, Revolution of the Daleks. I will warn when we are going into spoiler territory, so if you haven't seen the episode yet, do listen out for that. It feels like ages since the last big event status Dalek story in Doctor Who. We had Resolution, but that felt like a very small potatoes Dalek story, considering how long it had been since the last really good Dalek story. It was fine, and it did some cool new stuff, but it wasn't the big grand return of the Doctor's nemesis that I had hoped for. And put it this way, we hadn't had a really great Dalek story since 2008's Stolen Earth and Journey's End, with the closest thing to a decent Dalek story between that and now being Into the Dalek. The Stephen Moffat era of Doctor Who, Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi, it was pretty scarce for any decent Dalek stories. Resolution was kind of an upgrade, but it wasn't what I wanted at the time. However, moving over to Revolution of the Daleks, this episode really complements Resolution, taking that from being just kind of a one-off story to making it more of a multi-part kind of story, because Revolution of the Daleks is very much a sequel to that story. And it was great to see this episode build on some of the ideas that were laid down in that story. There was a lot of great potential with Resolution that just wasn't to be in that story that gets paid off here, in a very suspenseful, very fun, very thrilling Doctor Who special. But it's not perfect though. In true Chris Chibnall fashion, well, more Series 12 Chris Chibnall anyway, there's a lot of fun and thrills, but there's also a number of cut narrative corners, which are a little egregious even on first watch. Just some things that made me go, that's awfully convenient. Or just had me scratching my head, just things that could have been elaborated on more interestingly than they were. It's pretty cut and dry in places. Very face value, there were lots of times when I was wondering what's going on elsewhere. This is a big scale story, so what's going on elsewhere? But what we see on screen is all that matters to this story, and it's like, I would have liked to have known what was going on in the grand scheme of things. And there are some very important character beats that do feel just a bit cut and dry regarding the companions. However, one saving grace is definitely Captain Jack Harkness's return, and it's much more substantial this time than it was in Fugitive of the Judoon. It was worth the wait to see Captain Jack return against the Daleks, and to have someone that's more on the level of the companions that is more familiar with the Daleks than they are. I really like how Captain Jack has more experience with the Doctor that the Doctor doesn't really talk about, or is able to exposit information that the Doctor would withhold from the quote-unquote fam, and there's a lot of fun throwbacks, but it does lead me to wonder, in the Big Bang, they kind of retconned every major invasion story, so things like Stolen Earth and Journey's End are no longer canon to the overall continuity, something that actually really pisses me off still. But this story does take full advantage of that in having the humans being very unfamiliar with the Daleks. But Captain Jack is citing prior Dalek invasions, so, like, what is and isn't canon now? Or is it canon to Captain Jack and just no one else? Did everybody else just forget except for those who are important? Like, what's the story there? As we all knew ahead, Jack Robertson would be returning in this episode, and I actually really enjoyed his performance here and his character amongst the greater scheme of things. I think this was a good story to include him, and it made good use of his character, beyond just being a Trump allegory. Yeah, he's still very much a Trump-inspired character, and they do drive that home a little bit in the third act. But to be honest, he's the corrupt CEO archetype really, isn't he? And that's exactly what Donald Trump has always been, so it's like, there you go. You know, there's gonna be parallels drawn up between the two. Even so, I found Jack Robertson to be a lot of fun. So, for the most part, this story came together pretty well. There are a few pieces that I feel could have just fit in a little tighter than they did. It's quite a loosely written story, but the return of Captain Jack is worth seeing. It gets the Daleks right, which is a lovely change of pace. And it builds upon the groundwork of a previous episode, meaning that there's a lot of interesting expansion going on here. I would say that Revolution of the Daleks is without a doubt the best Dalek story since the Russell T Davies era. Does it top the Russell T Davies Dalek episodes? No. That is in part down to the fact that they had to really hurry things along for this one. It feels kind of rushed towards the end. And it's another instance where I think the Daleks really just deserve two-part stories more than they do single-part episodes, especially if you're trying to tell a story on this kind of scale. Resolution worked okay as a single-part story because it was relatively small scale, but this I think deserved a little more time. So it's not perfect, but it's a fun Dalek story. And I would say it is well worth your time. Also worth noting, as far as Doctor Who festive specials go, this is probably the best one we've had. No, it's not the most tightly written, but this is a very quintessentially Doctor Who episode. It's larger than life, big idea sci-fi. Okay, spoiler warning in 3, 2... Get the fuck down, it's spoiler time! I wasn't expecting the Doctor to break out of prison as early as she did. I thought this was very much going to be an episode where Captain Jack Harkness would lead the fam against the Daleks while the Doctor is off away in space. Definitely kind of averted my expectations, but I do think that was a cool concept that we just didn't get to see. It's weird how it was marketed as almost like a solo episode for Captain Jack Harkness, when it was anything but. I had an absolute blast with the prison scenes as well. This episode really felt like a love letter to both the Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat era of Doctor Who, as we see a lot of quintessential Stephen Moffat baddies come back, such as the Weeping Angels and the Silence. I also loved seeing the Ood as well and the Pating. The throwbacks were a lot of fun and they didn't feel self-indulgent. I thought the whole thing of the guy cloning a bit of Dalek DNA and that kind of exploding out of control and getting more of an expansion on the body horror aspect was great. And I loved the look of the Dalek facility in Japan and seeing the mutants attacking Jack and Yaz. I really wish we could have seen more of the Daleks in Japan, as that's a really unique setting, but hey, it wasn't meant to be, I guess. BBC budget, am I right? I think the way they introduced the defense drone concept was really cool as well, and I really liked how the Daleks used those defense drones, augmented them to become Daleks. It's like an expansion of Resolution's idea of rebuilding Daleks from Earth components, but now it's done on the scale of a Dalek fleet. Daleks that were born on Earth, but are actually Daleks. Now, the Doctor's plan to get rid of the Daleks is, it doesn't work. There is just no way anyone in their right mind would do this. There's no way the Doctor would do this. Oh yeah, we're gonna contact SAS Daleks that will leave the humans alone but kill all of the fake Daleks. Okay, an SAS Dalek is still gonna be a Dalek. Any Dalek is gonna want other creatures dead. It would be awfully convenient for there to just happen to be Daleks that will leave human beings alone. And then when Jack Robertson wants to meet the real Daleks, they want to kill him. Because, you know, he's a human being. So they do want to kill humans. That much is clear. So the whole idea of these SAS Daleks, little contradictory. I think they maybe could have implied that the Doctor's not in her best state and her judgment is impaired by the revelation she doesn't know who she is anymore, because they do very much touch on the Timeless Child stuff. I think that definitely would have been a better get out there. And then we get something I've been waiting for a long time. We get a Dalek civil war. We see the Earth Daleks versus the Skaro Daleks, and yes, I jumped for joy when they started fighting each other. But then it was so short-lived. I would have loved to have seen more of this. This is what I mean when I said earlier, what's going on elsewhere? Because we knew that there were defense drone Daleks everywhere, but yet we just see a bunch of Skaro Daleks fight a bunch of Earth Daleks on the Clifton Suspension Bridge, and then a minute later, one of the Daleks is just like, all of the defense drones are destroyed. It's like, well, okay, that was quick, wasn't it? Like, the defense drones are augmented with proper Dalek tech as well. Surely they could stand up to the Skaro Daleks a little more than that. See what I mean? It's kind of too cut and dry. We also see loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of the bronze Skaro Daleks approaching Earth. And then the Doctor just draws every single Dalek that came to Earth inside the fake TARDIS, or secondary TARDIS, but disguised as the main one, and then self-destructs it. And good use of that secondary TARDIS. Really good use of that. But was that really every Dalek that came here? And can we rule out that there's more on the way? Heck, I just thought of something. You know what they could have done? Instead of having the Doctor bring the SAS Daleks, they could have had it so that the reconnaissance Dalek actually did manage to send the message to the Dalek fleet. And it just took them a while to get there. And then there's the departure of Ryan and Graham. And it feels like it was a last-minute addition, and it doesn't feel properly earned to me. Ryan kind of just has a change of heart that he would like to do what he does with the Doctor, but do it exclusively in his own time on Earth and on his own terms. And that's something that only comes about in this episode. It's not something that's been built up or anything like that. It's just, that's where we leave it. It's a really odd send-off for these characters, and I didn't really feel anything towards this departure. But I did like the scene with the bicycle kind of being reprised from The Woman Who Fell to Earth. That was a pretty nice return for that. I feel like Chris Chibnall was consciously aware that this didn't really have much of an emotional weight to this, so he kind of had that Grace cameo in there. But it didn't really hit for me. I was just kind of scratching my head at that, to be honest. I don't really know about that. So basically, for the Doctor and the fam part of the story, there is quite a bit of loose stuff in there. There's a lot that could definitely be tightened up. As far as the sci-fi B-movie stuff goes, though, Chris Chibnall really gets it right, and it's really nice to see the Daleks filmed in this way as well. They look fantastic on screen. The episode gets the Daleks right, it gets Captain Jack Harkness right, and between those two, they carry the episode really well. I also really enjoyed Jack Robertson's return. The weak link here is definitely the Doctor and the companions. And if I'm being completely honest, no surprise there. So overall, it's a good episode. It's a lot of fun, it's got a lot of momentum to it, a lot of B-movie horror stuff, which I really, really loved. It just wasn't entirely convincing with certain solutions. And unfortunately, it gives a very unconvincing send-off for two of the companions. Overall, it's fairly upper middle Dalek story. It's good. It's just not the greatness that we've had in the past. But now I hand it over to you, comment section, and my god, I always hate comment sections on Doctor Who videos, so I don't know what to expect here. But what do you guys think? Comment below and discuss, and as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, hit subscribe, hit the like button, and in the description below are different links to different social media feeds, as well as my Patreon and a join button for if you're feeling extra supportive and extra generous, but of course, as a big ask, you don't have to do that. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and have a great day.